So today we're going to be doing a Python video. I thought we could change things up. So we're going to learn about something called arrays. Keep in mind that when we're doing Python, we don't need a browser to display our final result. Instead, we use something called the terminal or the command prompt. Either one works. Back when I used the notepad, I would use the command prompt. So those two would work together. But many IDEs or code editors, I like to call it code editors, others like to call it IDE. But many IDEs already have a terminal built within them, so you can go ahead and use that. I often say terminal, but they mean the same thing, terminal command prompt. So whichever one you have, you can go ahead and use that. They both do the same thing. So with that being said, let's talk about Python arrays. First thing that's really important is that you need to know what an array is. So usually what we would do in Python when we wanted to store values into variables, so we want to store information into variables, what we would do is we would create a variable. In this case, the variable is food1. Then after that, we would name that variable. Like let's say ice cream. And let's say food2. Let's make that cake, I guess. And then let's make it food3, which is cookies, or cookie. I like to name my variables something similar to what my values are. In this case, my values are all food items, so I just made my variable food. So I made food1 ice cream, food2 cake, and food3 cookie. And then what we can tell the terminal to do is that we can tell it to print these three items. So just like that, we can print food1, food2, and food3. So then we go over down here into the terminal, and then we say py file.py, or whatever the name of your file is. Let's save this really quickly. And also as a refresher, since I haven't done Python in such a long time, you need to make sure that your file, you need to have this right here is the navigation to the file. So you need to have your navigation to the file. You can do that by going to your File Explorer or your Finder if you have a Mac, File Explorer if you have a PC. You can go ahead over there and do it. I have a video on that. I'll probably link it in the description below. If not, then let me know in the comments and I'll go ahead and do it. But once you have that navigation, then you need to source the file. So we put py to show that we're trying to compile some Python, and then we name the file, file.py, or whatever the name of your file is. So that's just a little bit of a recap in Python. So my main point here is to show you how we use one variable to store one thing. So we use one variable to store one value. So when we say python file.py, the terminal is going to show ice cream, cake, and cookie like that. So essentially what we're doing is we stored one value into one variable. Instead, what we can do is we can do something called an array. An array allows you to store multiple values within one variable. So what we can do is we can create a variable. I'm going to name it food. Then in square brackets, what we can do is we can create it, add our variables. So ice cream, cookie, I'll do cake because I think I did cake second, and then cookie. So we implemented our values, so all we can just say is print food. So we're telling the terminal to print this array, and the terminal will do that. It will print the array. It will list all the items that are in the array. So yeah, that's pretty much what it is. Arrays allow us to store multiple values into one variable. These are also known as strings. I like to call them values because they are located. Oh, I didn't save it. That should be the result. It should show it. This is the array. These are just the values in the array. This is the actual array. So this is the result you're gonna get when you do this. Ignore the one above. So from there, what we can do is we can manipulate this array. In other words, we can access different things from this array. So the first thing that we can do is we can access which item we want in the array. Let's say we had like an extremely long array and we were trying to find an item, but we weren't sure which one we needed. Well, the terminal is there for us and we can do that. So the first value in every array is 0. The second value is 1, and so on and so forth. Please remember this, because if you do 1, the terminal is going to print the second one and you won't know why. So this is obviously why. Because the 0 is, when you say 0 in Python, it's essentially the first value in the array. So let's go ahead and let me show you how you do that. So what we're doing is we're accessing items through this array. So let's say we can make it X. Let's say we make one of this item X. And let's make X food 0 in square brackets. What I'm trying to do is that I'm trying to find the first item or the first value that is located in this array. So then let's say print X. I'll explain why we're using X in a little bit, but you'll probably know why. So let's go over there and the terminal will print ice cream. Because 0, when I said 0, I wanted to ask for the first value that was in the array. In this case, the first value was ice cream, so the terminal would display ice cream. So that's pretty much how that works. So the reason why we use X is because we are essentially making X equal an item that is in the array, or a value that's in the array. If we just say print food, if we tell it to print food, it's going to print the whole entire array, and we don't want to print the whole entire array. All we just want to do is we want to print a specific value that's in the array. So that's why we say X is food 0, because we just want to print one specific value. And in that case, this value was ice cream. The next thing we're gonna do is that we're gonna essentially substitute items. So to substitute items, what you can do is first you need to have your array. We already have our array up here, so that's not a big issue. The next thing we need to do is we need to tell the terminal which item we want to substitute. In this case, I want to substitute the first item. So I'm going to say food 0 because that is the first item in the first value in the array. And then I'm going to make the first item equal scones. But what this is going to do is that it's going to tell the terminal that we want to replace ice cream with scones. So food 0 equals scones. And then after that, let's just print food. This is kind of like an exception because when we print food, it's not exactly going to print the whole array because we already defined food 0 as scones. So it's just going to replace it. So let's go over here, save it, and then implement that into the terminal. What that's going to do is that it's going to replace scones with ice cream. We can replace scones with something else. It doesn't have to be 0. We can say we want to replace it with cake, and we can go ahead and do that. So it's going to replace scones with cake. So whichever one you choose, whichever number you put in the square brackets, then that's the one it's going to replace. So that's pretty much how that works. And also, I just really want to make sure that this goes into your head, that 0 is always the first value of an array. It's not 1, it's 0. 0 is the first value of an array. 1 is the second, and so on. It's really important that you know this because you're going to run into problems later if you don't. So from here, what we can do next is that we can find how many characters are in an array. To do this, we can make X equal the length of the array. When we use len, what we want to do is that it returns the number of items that are in the array, hence what it says right here. So it's going to tell us how many items are in this array, how many values are in this array. So what we are going to do is we're going to say len, and then we're going to state the variable of the array. The variable, we said food. We assigned the variable food to this array. So we're gonna find the length of it, and we're gonna assign it to the variable x. Then all we can just do from here is we can print x, because x is already the length of food. So we can just print x. And then let's go down here to the terminal, and what it's going to say is oh, I forgot to save it. Please remember to save your files, because, yeah. And then from there, the terminal is going to print 3, because there are 3 values in this array. So that is pretty much how that works. The next thing we can do to manipulate these arrays is we can use something called for loops. I've already done a video on for loops in Python, but we can implement for loops into arrays. So what we can do is we can say for x in food. what this is going to do is it's going to say for x in this, then print x. Okay, let me put it colon print x. So what this is going to do is that it's going to loop all the items in the array. So I think we're good to go from there. So let's go down to the terminal, and now it's going to loop all the items. So for one item, it's going to have one line, then it's going to go through a line break, and then it's going to do the same thing. Then it's going to do the next item, and so on until the array ends. So it's just going to loop through all the values of the array, all the items of the array. They mean the same thing, values, items. So yeah, that's pretty much what that does. It just loops through all of them. When I say it loops through them, it just lists all of them. That's just the way of saying it. Well, now what we can do from here, the other way how we can manipulate through arrays is we can add and remove stuff. To add stuff, we have to add a dot append after the variable of the array. To remove, there's two ways. You can use pop or you can use remove. First, let's talk about how we can add stuff. To add stuff, we just have to add a dot append. Append allows us to add stuff. And then, in parentheses, we can add which one we want. I want to add scones to this array. So that's why I'm going to say scones, because I want to add that to this array. And then what we're going to say is we're going to print food. And what this is going to do is that it's going to print the whole array, and it's going to add scones. So let's go over here and let's say ice cream, cake, cookie, and scones. It adds scones to the end. It will always add the one that you said at the end, because that is like an extension. It follows after it. So that's how you add stuff. To remove stuff, there are two ways. There's the pop method and the remove method. For a pop method, you must include the number, and for the remove method, you must include the exact value of the array. So I recommend going ahead and doing remove. They both accomplish the same thing, pop and remove, but remove just makes things easier because it works a lot like how the append works. So let's go ahead and do the remove. What this is going to do is that it's going to remove a value in the array. So let's say I wanted to remove cake. What this is going to do is that it's going to remove cake from the array, and it's just going to print ice cream and cookie. If you wanted to use the pop method, what you would have to do is you would have to source a number or an integer. I want to remove the second value in the array, and that second value is cake. So what I can do is I can use the pop and I can put 1 because I want to remove the second value. The second is always 1. However, there is some sort of error. It's parentheses. I thought it was square brackets. There we go. And then now it will print that. And from there, as you see, it becomes food. So don't use square brackets. I got confused with another thing that we talked about. I got confused with the, what was it that I was talking about? Yeah, I got confused with the other method, which you use to access items through the array, to access values through the array. Make sure you're using the parentheses. Yeah, once again, I got confused with accessing items in the array. I thought that we had to use the square brackets, but no, we use parentheses, not square brackets. That's on me. So what this is going to do is that it's going to remove the second value from this array. So 1 is the second value. So 1 is always second, so it's going to remove the second value. So keep in mind that they both do the same thing. Pop and remove, they do the same thing. No exceptions. They just do the same thing. They both remove items from a list. So that pretty much concludes this video. These were just a couple of examples of what you can do to arrays. There's a lot more, like you can reverse it, you can index it, but that's just a little bit extra. This is just the basics of arrays. But that pretty much, once again, ends this video. If you had any questions, please leave them down in the comments below and I will answer them. The code for this video will also be in a link in the comments below, so go ahead and check that out if you want the code. And then lastly, if you enjoyed the video, be sure to hit the subscribe button. And if you didn't understand something, once again, you had a question, didn't understand something, had some problem, let me know in the comments below. I will definitely help you to fix it so that you can get the right result that's intended. And once again, I'll see you guys next time.